Hey everyone, CDD Reviews here. I am CDD and this is going to be a review of the new Saul Williams album, MartyrLoserKing. Saul Williams is a rapper, poet, actor, musician, and he's pretty much postmodern literature's most relevant and most significant individual. And this is his full-length commercial album, his first in about 5 years. Now, I've always been casually aware of Saul Williams. I can't say I've heard a Saul Williams album from beginning to end. I've been aware from the time he collaborated with Trent Reznor. I think he also opened for 9 Inch Nails. He also did this Broadway musical. It featured music inspired by and written by Tupac Shakur. Now, with this album, I was interested in it. Certainly. I mean, for one, it's Saul Williams' first in a little while, and from what I've understood of the guy, Saul is a very esoteric individual. He moves at the beat of his own drum. He doesn't allow himself to be stuck in one genre. He's just formidable and just nuts. So I thought I'd give this album a try, seeing as I need some kind of entryway into his music anyway. So, what did I think of it? Well, I enjoy it a lot, but there's a big hole in the wall, a big elephant in the room that is holding me back from really loving the hell out of it. Now, this album is about 12 tracks long, 41 minutes in length, but musically and for the most part lyrically, he does not mince a single second of it. If you're into African music, if you're into electronic producers like Arca, or maybe One Tricks Point Never, or maybe a little bit of Orient, if you are a fan of Death Grips, you will get down with this album. The opening track, Groundwork, featuring these up-pitched vocal snippets before it goes in with this really ominous and sinister sub-bass that I really love. All the while there's like these bright synths coming in, the occasional foot stomping and clapping that really drives the track home. Then there's the track Horn of the Clock Bike, which has like this piano sample that's looped perfectly. It loops over and over, and it does not get boring at all. It does not get grating or anything. It just keeps going. Especially when bass hits, some wood blocks added to it. Ashes actually has vocoder vocal delivery from Saul as he's chanting, "Dancing on the corpse's ashes," which is freaky. Think Like They Book Say actually is one of the more driving tracks on the album. Maybe not so much in composition, but also just how manic Saul gets on this project. The Bear and Cold in This Cotton is a two-parter track. The first half and having like this more possibly borderline acid house feel to it. It's more victorious despite the fact the song is by no means a happy track, especially when it gets to the second half where it gets all digital and just glitchy as hell. Burundi is also like a continuation of this drum machine vibe. It's really driving, really final. Noise Came From Here, I think, is probably my least favorite instrumentally, other than the closing track. I like the campfire vibe it's got to it. These like grouped vocals that are looped and this nice and warm synth that comes in. Saul is singing much more gently than on the rest of the album, but still it's kind of a downer how low-key it is. Down for Some Ignorance is pretty interesting. It actually reminds me of Saul Williams jumped on like a instrumental that Bjork was making on Vespertine with like these music box sounding effects. Maybe not one of my favorite tracks instrumentally, but still a highlight. Roach Eggs, I think he goes into his Arca influence as if he listened to Mutant a little too far with these synth and bass hits that come in simultaneously after a few rests of beats, but still, it's definitely a track that I like a lot, partially because Mutant was one of my favorite albums of last year. All Coltrane Solos at Once, once again coming up with a driving rhythm and some more aggressive delivery both vocally and compositionally. The last two tracks, no different in Poems, Drones, Poems, Drums. Not really doing much other than just being part of the concept as it just drowns out into a digital nothingness, which I like. It's just not one of my favorites. There's no bad composition or production choice on this album. It's just that some people are going to like more than others, and that's going to vary from person to person. Now, the one thing that's the big elephant in the room is what Saul's saying and what kind of concept Saul is going for on this album. To pretty much summarize the concept, you have this Burundi native, or someone living in Burundi, who works as a coltan miner, coltan being a mineral that you use to make smartphones with. And he's going through all this atrocities. He's witnessing all this stuff happening to him. And one day, out of nowhere, he just decides to become a hacker and finds his way to become a hacker. And he's hacking through everything. He's not just hacking through the internet, he's also hacking into religion, economics, politics, health. He's pretty much hacking into the universe as a whole. And eventually, once he figures out that maybe all this knowledge is too much to handle and he needs maybe some ignorance to drown out all the stuff that he's now already processed and unable to handle, he's pretty much goes through this downfall of a mental state. It is essentially conquered by the internet itself, which he thought he had under control in the first place. And that's all assumption, really. There's no clear plot as to what happens other than there is a miner, and his name is probably MartyrLoserKing, which the rhyme scheme this album title uses and the name Martin Luther King uses is so uncanny that I really can't ignore that. So this individual, he's a miner in Burundi, or some East African country, which if you do your research Burundi is actually better known for its agriculture than it is its mining. It's probably just an outsider looking in, but that's just what I've researched since learning about this album. Anyway, yeah, he's a miner, he learns how to hack, and there's no obvious reason how he learned, nor is there a reason of what caused him to want to, other than the before-mentioned atrocities and all that. And he essentially loses his mind because of all the knowledge, and pretty much becomes this slave or proxy to the internet itself. Again, a concept I love, it's just I wish it was the plot, the narrative that it was going for, since this album does run in a linear sense. I just wish it was, more developed. And that's unfortunately the big Achilles heel for this album. But as for what Saul's saying, it's intriguing. So take the song Horn of the Clockpike, which seems to follow this woman that grows up noticing all these heroes but never experiencing any of these heroes because the authorities pretty much leave their martyred statues as reminders as to what happens when you try to rebel. And the result of her trying to descend seems to be the result of the song Ashes, and her village and everyone in it gets burned to a crisp. Then Think Like They Book Say seems to get all manic about gender roles and religion. Think like they book say, think like they book say. He's hearing pretty much, you need to think like the good book says, like your Quran, your Bible. Just don't think about your own stuff. Just think like how the book would tell you to think. The Bear, the Colt, and His Cotton. The first half, I think he's just really understanding like all these atrocities, and he's really confused as to how to describe it and how to process it. But then when he learns how to hack, it all becomes much more clear, alarmingly more clear, as he's hacking into ignorance, he's hacking into religion, he's hacking into social media, he's hacking into loneliness, he's hacking into everything, and now he gets it. He's ready to overthrow this society, and that's what he essentially comes up with in Burundi, which he describes himself as a candle, which is pretty uplifting. But then this eventually takes a turn for the worse, where with Down for Some Ignorance, he's learning about the downsides of knowledge, like all this horrible stuff going on in the outside world, and he just doesn't know how to handle it other than just drowning himself in ignorance, trying to say, oh, well, I'm not going to let that bother me. Road Shags, eventually, he's taken that to an extreme, just pretty much divulging into nothing but the internet. He even taps into religion a lot and finds some way to become this god, or he's under the assumption that he's become a god of the internet, tapping into religion and its 5 billion followers, which is, yeah. And then there's the song All Coltrane Solos at Once, which initially I was excited for. I was hoping it would literally just be every single John Coltrane saxophone solo played all at once. I was initially disappointed that it wasn't until I thought about the song title and I thought about what he's saying. Because when you go on YouTube and you find like videos of every song of a Trout Master replica played at the same time, which it's an actual video, look it up. You think about it, it seems funny at first, it seems like asinine to think about, but when you think about it, you realize that this is what it sounds like to know everything. Knowing everything about everything is the equivalent of processing every single saxophone solo ever played by John Coltrane all at once, which makes it even more obvious as he's shouting, "Fuck you, understand me," over and over and over again, which seems to be the mentality of those who have been just absorbed by the internet. They don't know how to deliver their information. They don't know how to explain themselves. And they just seem so upset about it. The last two tracks, No Different and Homes, Drones, Poems, and Drums, again, it's just him being processed into the internet itself. And it's got a few lyrical moments, but none so significant that I can remember them, other than that it serves as the end for what could have been this civilization's great hero. So overall, there's a lot to take in. A lot. And given this, I'm going to definitely be returning to it often. The instrumentals are great. Saul is just really thought-provoking as a lyricist. He's nuts. He's saying all these things about these atrocities going on in Africa and the U.S. and pretty much anywhere, and how trying to solve this issue through the internet is not going to accomplish as much as we'd like. I'm definitely intrigued by what Saul's going to do next. However, that doesn't excuse the album from having a vague plot, although the encrypted nature of this album, it serves the purpose of what this concept is trying to go for, and I certainly admire it for that, but on a level of just personal enjoyment. I can't say that this cryptic plot is something that I'm pleased with 100%. I mean, I'm pleased with it in an objective sense, obviously, but still it just leaves a lot more to desire. Plus, given that there's like some tracks that are less favorable instrumentally, it's prevented me from loving this album entirely, but still, it's definitely going to grow on me. It's definitely going to be in regular rotation for quite a while. This is a plus 1.9 out of plus 3. Enjoyable album. I'm not head over heels for it, at least not yet per se, but still, it's not really something that is absolutely something I love, but just something I love and net enjoyability. But if you're giving this album a listen, and please do, what'd you think of this album? Did you love this album? Did you hate this album? What's the reasoning behind it? Let me know, and do recommend something else to review. This is CWD Reviews here, signing off.